Hey guys, coming to you a day early because this something impactful has happened. This is our first broadcast where we're covering an event. Hey guys, coming to you a day early. Oops. Because this something impactful has happened. This is our first. Oops. Sorry for the echo. This is our first live podcast after something actually done happened, which would be the NBA trade deadline. You know that happened at 3 o'clock, but we all have working class, so we're gonna cover it right now at 8:04 p.m. Eastern time. So I'm here with the fellas rocking out, and don't worry for our loyal viewers, we will still have a podcast tomorrow as well, regular time 9:30. This is just one where we're going to be talking about the trade deadline and trades that happened, didn't happen, and what we think. So I'm gonna let the fellas introduce themselves. As you see, I'm with the loyal. It's the three amigos once again tonight. So go ahead, Matt. Introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Matt. I'm just hanging out here, playing Tecmo Super Bowl and geeking out. But let's talk about this NBA trades because this is borderline ridiculous already.
Yeah, man. I mean, we've been talking about, well, specifically the Sixers. We've been talking about the Sixers in the podcast like nonstop. Should we trade Nolans, Jalil? Should we trade both of them? Um, and then a number of other trades went down, but you know that's how the trade deadline works.
True story. True story. That is how the trade deadline works. There are bound to be people who are disappointed, and that is what we're all feeling right now. Some people thought that there would be some impactful moves made, but it turned out that there really wasn't any impactful moves made outside of Boogie Cousins. So I guess that's where we can start, since that's really what kicked off this trade deadline. What did y'all think about DeMarcus Cousins getting traded to New Orleans? Go ahead, Matt.
Basically, he got traded for nothing. Really, I mean, I don't understand why. First of all, if you want to trade Cousins, at least give me some type of substance, But listening to Vlade Divac's reasoning, it makes him sound much more stupid. Really, because it's like my question is, what was the point? For all that, you might as well stand pat and build around DeMarcus Cousins. I mean, he made it clear he wants to stay in Sacramento. He could work something out, whatever. But it just I don't understand it. I really never understood, particularly during All-Star Weekend. That's even worse. So Sixers, it helps big time. It helps a little bit more, but I don't understand the real reasoning, whether it be the money, whether it be your plan, or you basically just told your franchise player thanks and screw you. So I really don't understand it.
Well, you have to think about it from Vlade Divac, as stupid as he is. He actually, you know, the rest of the guys who were involved in the trade, I guess coaches and the rest of the front office, had to get him in on the trade. So once they got him in on the trade, there was, I guess before this trade actually went through, DeMarcus Cousins for Buddy Hield, and then the two other players and the draft picks. There was actually apparently a better trade that they had declined, and so in order to ensure that Vlade Divac would stay on board, they went ahead and accepted that trade on Sunday night. So that's how that all went down. I only partially agree that they gave him up for nothing, because, I mean, you did get Buddy Hield, who, I mean, some people are saying, somebody said he's going to be the next Steph Curry. I'm like, I don't think he's the next Steph Curry, but I do think he's going to be a very good player, a formidable NBA player for years, especially because he's such a good shooter. So you did get a good young shooting guard, but DeMarcus Cousins is the best NBA center. He's the best center in the league, and you really didn't. The draft pick that they got was top 3 protected, and with DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis, and then you still have Jrue Holiday on the Pelicans. That team is definitely probably going to end up getting an 8 seed. So that pick, instead of potentially getting a top 5 pick, you're going to end up with a pick that's probably somewhere between 15 and 20, probably even lower than that, depending on what the Pelicans do in the playoffs. But as I said before, DeMarcus Cousins is probably my favorite player in the league, aside from LeBron. And to me, that front office in Sacramento, just completely destroyed his first 7 years. If you look at his stats, every year he's improved and gotten, his points have gone up, rebounds, assists even have gone up, and he's gotten better as a shooter. The only year that, there was promise for the Sacramento Kings was actually, I want to say, 2014, I think, when it might have been 2 years ago, when Mike Malone was the head coach. And for once, DeMarcus Cousins had, faith and trust in one of his coaches, and then he gets fired because the team was doing bad. But what didn't make sense was DeMarcus Cousins was on the bench because he was sick. So, that organization was just a dumpster fire. And to me personally, I think for me it was good to see him get out of Sacramento because that organization is not going anywhere soon in terms of playoffs or winning championships. And so, for him, it's the best situation, regardless of whether or not he was upset about leaving Sacramento, and now he's missing out on millions of dollars. But that's a whole nother story. The Kings, did what they do best and made a terrible decision. From an organizational standpoint, they made a bad decision to trade him and not really get anything in return. But for DeMarcus Cousins, I think it was the best situation if he wants to win a championship. Although he might get, although he's probably going to end up getting much less money.
Hey, you. Yes. Yeah, how do I put this? The Kings are a mess. I think Trey put it best. They are a dumpster fire. It really looks like the team the NBA should have taken over and set a team to run them better is the Kings. The Kings have been a mess for at least the last 20 years, I want to say. Since Chris Webber, Jason Williams, they haven't had a good player in ages. To a lesser extent, Vlade Divac, but yeah, he's proven to be an idiot. He is a positive example of why former NBA players should not go into the front office. He probably would be a better coach than he is a GM, but you never know. So I'm off him. But we want to thank the Kings personally for personally setting the market and screwing the whole trade deadline up, because I'm sure the Pelicans were just all like, hey, Kings, just for fun, here's Buddy Hield, Tyreke Evans, another couple players for DeMarcus Cousins. What you think? Because they said that was the same package they offered the Sixers for Jahlil Okafor, except it didn't include Buddy Hield. So I think they were all like, if I could narrate for the Pelicans real quick without knowing exactly what happened, because I have no connections to their front office. They were probably all like, hey, let's take a shot in the dark, and we heard Boogie's available. Let's take a shot in the dark. Yo, Vlade, what can we get for DeMarcus Cousins? How about Buddy Hield, Tyreke Evans, a random player and a top 3 pick this year. He was probably all like, sold. And the Pelicans GM was probably all like, you sure? Am I being pumped or something? Where's Ashton Kutcher? He's all like, you sure you want to make this deal? All right. And he probably had the same look most of us do when we play 2K and we know the computer shouldn't be accepting this stupid trade we just made. But literally, the Kings got robbed. They got Buddy Hield basically for DeMarcus Cousins and Amari Osprey or Caspi. And, you know, they just really got hosed, man. And, you know, I'm happy for Boogie. He gets to play on the team. He'll probably get to experience playoff basketball, which he hasn't experienced in forever. So, you know, that's great for him. Plus, he gets to team up with Anthony Davis. Now, we'll see. We'll see if they make the playoffs. I mean, my thing with them is it's I know that they're like 2 games, or depending on what happens tonight when they play, there'll be 2.5, 3 games outside of the 8th spot. And they're really battling the Nuggets, the Trailblazers, the Mavericks. Now they're battling a bunch of teams for that 8th spot. So we'll see. They should make it, but nothing's guaranteed. And I think that team will be sucked by the Warriors, obviously, but also because of chemistry and everything. I think they'll be a deadly team next year, especially if they can re-sign DeMarcus Cousins and then put some shooting around him after free agency and because of draft picks and everything. But we'll see. I'll let you guys get back in on it, then we can move to the next trade.
Yeah, because here you go. Speaking of organizational dumpster fires, you know, the Sacramento is, like you said earlier, is a organizational mess. I mean, this is not the first time we've heard Sacramento make, you know, bad decisions, one bad decision after another. And for them to do this, you know, my question is, how does it benefit Sacramento? I mean, what is the plan? What is their plan? What is their course of action? You know, and you talk about, you know, your plan of action. You want a winning franchise and blah blah blah, and you do this. You better have a damn good reason why you're doing it. And from what I see, I don't see it. And if anything, the NBA should have taken care of Sacramento and stopped looking into the Sixers' directions, because frankly, fine. I mean, it's not a big organizational mess like it is in New York or LA. Now that situation got fixed, but Sacramento, I got nothing to say on that one.
Trey, before you go, I just want to say the Sacramento Kings are the Cleveland Browns of the NBA. They're a team that nobody wants to play for. And if you're the number 1 pick, whether that's Markel Starks, I think his last name is, in Washington.
Fultz.
Fultz. Thank you. Markel Fultz or Malik Monk or Alonzo Ball. You know, it might be perfect for him because his father's drunk and high. He thinks Alonzo Ball is going to be better than Steph Curry. But it might be great for Alonzo Ball because apparently his father wants him in California anyway. But no one should go to Sacramento. Anybody who gets drafted by Sacramento should try and force their way out. And I know the NBA is not the NFL where players really hold that power, but in this case with Sacramento, I think it's warranted. Go ahead, Trey.
Yeah, I mean, for Sacramento, like Matt was saying, like, what is their course of action? It doesn't seem like they have one, really. It just seems like they kind of like what they did with Nerlens Noel. The Sixers did with Nerlens Noel. They're like, okay, we're going to have to pay DeMarcus Cousins a lot of money. And for whatever reason, this organization, like we said, is a dumpster fire, and they don't know what they're doing in terms of rebuilding. At one point, I was telling Colin this earlier or yesterday. at one point the Kings had Isaiah Thomas, DeMarcus Cousins, and Hassan Whiteside on the roster at the same time. Now imagine that team. But this team, I mean, and they've, they drafted Jimmer Fredette, and they could have had, I can't think of who it was. They drafted Nick Stauskas with the 8th pick, and they could have had, I think they could have gotten Zach LaVine instead of taking him. That organization just, they don't. I mean, the closest comparison in another sport would be the Cleveland Browns. They don't draft well, and when they seemingly do draft well, the player turns out to be a bust. And the one player that they have that's good, they trade away for nothing. And it's like, okay, where are you going with this? The only good thing to take out of this is for Sixers fans, because now that that Sacramento pick that they have either this year or next year is going to be. I mean, that pick is. I mean, because that team is going to be they're going to be the worst team in the league. Well, they will be by the end of this year probably, and going into next year they will be the worst team in the league next to the Nets. So the Sixers might be able to get another first, number 1 pick, or they'll have at least number 1 odds. But yeah.
Thank you, Sam Hinkie. That's all I got to say on that. Was thank you, Sam Hinkie. Because if it weren't for Sam Hinkie, we wouldn't be talking about draft picks coming out of Sacramento.
Brilliant move, Sam Hinkie. One of his more brilliant moves. Brilliant move, Sam Hinkie. Turning Nick Stauskas into 2 picks from Sacramento. Good job. I'll give him that. Good job.
And sorry to cut you off. And also, if you look at this as what Trey brought a good point. The list that the players that he listed, that's a caliber playoff team, believe it or not. If you put the right coach in there, the right situation, that is a playoff team. And not having a plan to put the players in the right system and have the right coach and the right whatever, it does show ineptitude. And I think the owners, I don't know, but the owners even don't look like they don't know what they're doing. So it really puts the product of the Sacramento Kings in. Geez, you changed your logo and you went back to the old school Kings, and only difference is purple now, and yet your product is let me try to use the right verbiage here. Crappy. That's all it is. Like, you expect me to put this new everything, and yet your franchise is falling apart, and you want a new arena in all places, Sacramento. Okay, whatever.
It's crazy how, Sacramento used to be exciting to watch. It's crazy how tide has turned. It used to be that the Clippers were the disaster and the dumpster fire. Now the Clippers are good, the Warriors are good. It used to be the Clippers and the Warriors, and the 2 good teams were the Lakers and the Kings. Now it's been flipped, where California has 3 good teams, and then Sacramento is the dumpster fire. And, I hate to say it because I'm all for minorities getting a chance, but since them 2 white brothers that brought in Jason Williams, Vlade Divac, since they left, it's been a disaster in Sacramento since they sold it to Shaquille O'Neal, the Indian guy from India. Clarification, I know. The Indian guy, what's his name? His name is actually really close to Vlade Divac. I actually think it's Randy Vivek or something. Randy Vivek. I don't know, Indian pronunciation. But like they've been a dumpster fire since him. I don't know. Maybe Shaquille O'Neal needs to take some lessons from Magic Johnson and ease his way into becoming a full owner of the Kings. So maybe then it'll get better. Then he can fire Vlade Divac and get somebody in there that actually knows what they're doing. But moving right along, we're going to go to our next trade, which is the Bulls did make a trade. It happened towards the end of the trade deadline. They wound up trading Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott for Cameron Payne. Let me get this right. Anthony Morrow, somebody named Laverne, and a second-round pick. So, guys, what you think about that? Did that make Oklahoma City better? Is Chicago better? Who's better?
Let me get in there real quick. I mean that's a to me that was a crazy trade. I was like, wow. I mean because that was like a 5-player deal because it sent, like you said, it sent Taj Gibson and I believe who was the other player in the trade? Taj Gibson and somebody else to the Thunder. Huh?
Doug McDermott.
Right. Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott. And Doug McDermott, the crazy thing is, Doug McDermott is their best shooter. But in return, I mean, to me, although in terms of play style and what they needed, it didn't really make sense. But they did get much younger. You have Cameron Payne, Joffrey Laverne, who's actually a very good young big man. And then they got one other player. I think it was like, a bench player. But I don't know, like you add Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott on that team, actually, I mean, to me that helps that team out tremendously. I don't understand. I mean, it helps it helps the Thunder out, but for the Bulls, I really don't see like the benefit in it besides getting a little bit younger. But like if I'm D Wade, I'm like, okay, what are we doing here, guys? I thought we were trying to win a championship, not get younger. So I mean, from that perspective, it's like, what are we doing? But yeah, the crazy thing is that the Chicago Bulls, the addition of D Wade was supposed to be, was supposed to take them over the top. But now there's rumors of Jimmy Butler getting traded. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But I mean, it still can happen, during the draft or whatever. D Wade is showing his age. They're blaming things on teammates. And you got Rajon Rondo who can't shoot and is a shell of himself. And it's like, what's going on with the Chicago Bulls? They were supposed to be a playoff team, and they're looking like they're going to end up missing out on that 7th or 8th seed. As for the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think those two players, like Taj Gibson is a very good power forward. I think he'll actually end up starting for them. And you might actually have Andre Roberson come off the bench and have Doug McDermott start. But I mean that helps them out tremendously, and I think that might be for them to make the playoffs. That might be like I don't know if you want to call it a tipping point, but that's going to be crucial in them making the playoffs. The addition of Doug McDermott and Taj Gibson, especially Taj Gibson, because he has playoff experience. But I mean, that's my feelings on the whole Chicago trade.
Goes back. First, I'm gonna look at from OKC standpoint. I know that Westbrook is the man. And I believe they're trying to supplement what OKC's trying to do as far as trying to retool OKC, more of a retool thing. But as for Chicago, I'm looking more at Chicago like, wait. I understand you let go of Derrick Rose. I get that. And you bring in D Wade. I get it. But again, are you reloading the gun, or are you rebuilding? and I don't know Chicago's roster very well, but if you're making these moves to where as though you're letting your fan base know now what's a year out, we'll sit a year out, just rebuild for 1 year, okay, fine, but as far as that's concerned, I have a wait and see mentality approach on this one. Let's wait and see how this turns out. Because when this happened, I was not shocked nor surprised. It's like, let's see how this goes. Let's see how this works, because OKC is going. It's the Russell Westbrook show, and that is what it is. You want a cast of characters around that, but also for Chicago, it's like D-Wade is getting older, right? And like Trey said, Rondo's a shell of himself. And after that, it's like, what? After Jimmy Butler, it's like, what is there? What is this team? So, if you're trying to build around Jimmy Butler, fine. But let's see how this thing turns out. Let's see how this plays out for the remainder of the season. Well, if they make the playoffs or not. So I have more of a let's see how.
All right, what happened to Matt?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to Matt, but I wanted to just pop in and say something before he was talking about, like, if you want to build around Jimmy Butler, that's fine. Jimmy Butler is 27 or 26, and I think he'll be 27 come May. So I mean, you can't really build around a 27-year-old, especially the type of game he plays. Like it doesn't. Like he's not. He only has like 4, maybe 5 years left, just because of the type of he's more of a hustle guy, and like, if the Bulls are rebuilding, I don't see like Jimmy Butler is going to be there. I think probably for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. But if you're rebuilding around him, he's only one part of of the pieces that you need to rebuild. And if I'm D Wade, like I was saying earlier, like I didn't come here for a rebuild. I came here to try to bring a championship to Chicago.
Yeah, man. It's kind of funny, man. OKC is kind of doing the whole, well, we need to put pieces around Russell Westbrook while we still can, because he only has, he re-upped, but it's really only for 2 more years. So, the window is closing on Russell Westbrook. So you need to, get some shooting around him, try to make a deep run in the playoffs. We'll see how far they get. And as far as Chicago, they have their point guard in the future now when it comes to Cameron Payne. They have the Rajon Rondo replacement, so I guess they could cut Rondo now if they wanted to. And then you really have Jimmy Butler for maybe another year before you can trade him. And then you have a lot of stuff going on where Jimmy Butler and D Wade. D Wade is, like Trey said, getting old. He's got his 3 rings. He's probably more of a 6th man now than a starter. But he's still working his way into that transition. But he's still D Wade. He still can give it to you, and they'll still probably be the 7th or 8th seed. They're still probably go to D Wade's good enough to get you to the first round. You'll probably lose, but he's good enough to get you to the first round. And we'll see, man. They have a bench now. They really didn't lose much by getting rid of Doug McDermott. Cameron Payne, Anthony Morrow, some guy I never heard of, and it only cost them a second round pick. So it's a good little pick, but it really helps OKC more than Chicago. Going along with what everybody else said, Chicago's in more of a rebuild slash still went down with a PG Wade and Jimmy Butler, but it's more of they're starting to retool and rebuild. So we'll see. But I definitely expect Jimmy Butler to be dealt probably over the summer, and then Dwayne Wade to not renew his contract. And who should be happy? I know Jallo Okafor wanted to go to Chicago, but seeing how much of a mess Chicago is, I think he should be happy that he's not in Chicago. And I know we'll get to that later, but just thought I'd throw that one in there. Go ahead, man. Finish your point.
Yeah, I just finished it, but basically, it's like it's more of a wait and see approach. Let's see how both of these franchises turn out after the season.
Oh, that's it? Okay. Well, let's go. Let's head towards because there were some trades made before the deadline. Let's hit the Raptors. The Raptors acquired Ibaka, sent Terrence Ross to the Magic. So who wanted that trade, guys? Go ahead, man.
Let's say it again. Ibaka for who?
Terrence Ross. He's like a swingman who can shoot.
Man, shoot, I don't know how I keep up with baseball trades. Ugh. I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna step back on that one. That I have no opinion on that one. I'm gonna step off on that one.
All right, Trey, go ahead.
I thought it was a very, very good trade actually. Like, the Raptors starting lineup was Lowry, DeRozan, what's his name? Not Crowder, but what is his name? Was it not Jay Crowder? But what's their? I can't think. They had a small forward. I can't think of his name. Whatever. He's a good defensive 3-and-D guy. And at power forward, you had Amir Johnson, who's I think 29 or 30. And although he's good, I think Quentin Patterson is out for the season. And then at center you have Jonas Valanciunas, and off the bench you had the guy who they just traded. I can't think. His name is escaping me. What's his name? But whatever. Who was kind of like your backup center / power forward. So I think the addition of Serge Ibaka fits well into their style of offense. Like you really need, because Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan are your main scorers, and then you have Valanciunas kind of as your third option, and then really what you need around them is good shooters.
The guy you're looking for is DeMarre Carroll. That was a small forward.
DeMarre Carroll, and then they traded
Jared Sullinger.
Jared Sullinger, right? But and although they did give up Terrence Ross, who I think fit well into their offense, you are getting a veteran power forward who can play defense, block shots, that type of thing, has playoff experience. And if you're thinking about matching up with the Cavs, DeMarre Carroll, I mean, although he's, no, I don't think anybody can truly stop LeBron. Like, I mean, he matches up fairly well with LeBron. Now you have Serge Ibaka, although he's a little bit, he's not the quickest power forward, but he is definitely much more athletic than Kevin Love. He matches up very, very well in the Raptors' favor. And then center, that's a little bit different situation because Valanciunas is an awkward matchup for them because the Cavs play more of a small ball lineup. But I can definitely see the Raptors matching up very well in the playoffs against the Cavs in a small ball lineup where you put Ibaka at center and you move DeMarre Carroll to power forward, and maybe you have DeMarre Carroll at small forward, and you have Amir Johnson at power forward. So you really have 2 or 3 power forwards in the game at the same time. So I think to me that was a very, very good trade. Although they did give up some young talent in Terrence Ross. To me, what the Raptors are doing, they're looking rather than looking in the future as if they're rebuilding, they're looking more like let's win now, and they're looking more, how can we improve the roster to make us in order to be able to match up better against the Cavs and the Celtics.
To me, right, it's a great trade for the Celtics, not the Celtics, the Raptors, and it just shows going along with Trey said that they're here to win now. I mean that probably won't help them if they do get past the Cavaliers and the Celtics against the Warriors, but it'll be good. It's definitely an improvement. They've added more shot blocking because Ibaka can protect the rim. Not that Jonas Valanciunas can't, but he's a more versatile scorer. He can shoot the three and everything, as we saw last year. It's a good little trade for them, and I am very very proud of the Raptors for changing the team and making moves because this is how you improve your team and have a deeper run into the playoffs and at least ensure that you'll have a competitive matchup against the Cavaliers and the Celtics, which is always a good thing. So, I'm definitely all for that. Uh, Switching gears a little bit to teams who didn't make a trade, I was a little bit surprised that the Celtics didn't make a trade, especially with all of these Isaiah Thomas's teasing on Twitter and everything with the clock emoji and everything. I was really surprised. Let's talk about teams who should have made a trade but didn't. Go ahead, go ahead. I'll give Matt more time. Go ahead, Trey.
Teams that did make a trade that shouldn't have. Well, one of them is the Celtics. They have a lot of They have a lot of good young players. They have a lot of trade assets from back from the Nets trade when the Nets mortgaged their whole entire future for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. To me, I think they should have made a trade. I didn't see them trading Isaiah Thomas just because. I mean, like mid-season trades for like top players don't usually turn out well for one team. It's always going to be lopsided just because if you trade, you're going to have to give up a draft pick. So when you give up a draft, when you trade a player, a top player for a draft pick, that other team who gets the draft pick, that draft pick no longer has the worth that maybe it did in the past because the team that that owned that draft pick, they're going to be that much better because of adding that player. To me, I wasn't surprised that they didn't trade Isaiah Thomas. I was a little bit more surprised that they didn't trade Avery Bradley. I mean, in my opinion, actually, he would have fit well on the Sixers. There were multiple places he could have gone. And they have multiple other young players and assets that they could have moved to really improve. They signed Al Horford in the playoffs, and I think he's making something like $30 million. I think he's getting way overpaid for what he's. I mean, he's not that he's not a good player, but for what he's giving them, there was definitely some moves they could have made, even with Al Horford and maybe a draft pick or a young prospect. I'm trying to think of another team. Well, I thought it was going to be the Sixers, but today they traded Nerlens. The Lakers, I was like, okay, are they going to make a trade? And they ended up making a trade. So a lot of the teams actually that I thought, coming up till today that hadn't made a trade yet actually went and made trades. So the only other team, I mean, that I would have liked to make a trade is my team, the Miami Heat. But and I'm actually glad that they didn't end up making any trades because the reason why they didn't make any trades is because they have a huge lack of future draft picks. Actually, I think the Sixers have their first round pick, not this year, but next year. So I'm actually glad that they didn't make the draft pick any major trades. What I wish they would do is go through the process of getting rid of Chris Bosh's contract, because I mean that opens up 26, 27 million. But I'll stop talking.
Boston actually, I'm glad Boston didn't make a move. I'm actually, because from looking at that roster, it's like, what's the point? What's the point? It's nothing. I mean, if you would trade Isaiah Thomas Jr., okay, fine, but for what? That's my only thing. It's like the way he's playing out of his mind. Boston's playing out of his mind. And to trade him, I don't think would be a conducive idea for as far as long term is concerned. Let me pause this thing. So I'm kind of glad Boston didn't make any moves. Actually, the Sixers situation, I don't think they should have done anything, honestly. But that's neither here nor there. It's like looking up and down the NBA.
Kick it out to the corner.
I mean, looking up and down the NBA and everything, teams that should have made a move. I don't. To me, I don't. There's not. I think not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room right now because of the market. The market's pretty tight, so you want it. But moving draft picks, or if you try to get, try to get better in the draft as far as first round picks and everything else, it's fine. But Boston did a good job. Just stay where we are, stay right where they are. So that's where I'm looking at right now, because that's the first team I'm thinking about is Boston. Like there's no point in moving anywhere. I mean, that's just my take on it.
I forgot to say one team. It was the Wizards. I was surprised that they didn't make any moves. I thought that they would make a move for Lou Williams, because they really don't have any ball handlers or offense in their starting lineup or their bench, for that matter. I mean, and they're on fire right now. You would think that they would make, a small move, but something that would make a big difference in terms of their bench. But they did make a move, and I guess they're gonna just sit tight and ride this this hot streak that they're on.
Two teams that I was really surprised about was I was surprised that Cleveland didn't make a move. All this talk about LeBron needing help and Cleveland didn't make a move. I was very surprised. I mean, they did add Kyrie Irving. They added dang it, what's the boy's name?
Kyle Korver.
There you go, Kyle Korver. They added Kyle Korver.
That wasn't. Was that a trade, or was that? Yeah, that was a trade, right?
What's the trade?
But either way, what I mean, even though you got Kyle Korver and everything else, and LeBron still crying about the team and everything else, I'm like, you got your team. You can't take. It's the fact that Cavaliers take games off sometimes.
Yeah, so I was surprised they didn't make moves, especially as Matt and Trey pointed out, or as I pointed out, I think in this podcast, is, he's been complaining about how he needed help, specifically a point guard. So I was really surprised that, for one, that they didn't sign one, because I'm sure that there's some valuable point guards. I know they worked out Mario Chalmers and all these other different things, but they need point guard. They need a point guard. Backing up Kyrie Irving, which is good to have backups for everything, as Love's injury, as Love's surgery showed us that you need a valuable backup. So, I was surprised. Carmelo didn't just get sick of it and didn't force his way out of New York, since he's the only player that can really force their way out of anywhere because he has a no trade clause. I really thought he might crack, but I guess he'll crack. I guess he'll crack this summer when he gets tired of Phil Jackson. But I was surprised that they didn't make a move. Who else was I surprised by? It was another team. Oh, the Pacers. They were in hot pursuit of Jalil Okafor, but they didn't make a move, and they were saying like they wanted to get help for Paul George before they lose him in another year and a half. So I guess that means they might trade him. I don't know, man, because it doesn't seem like Al Jefferson, Jeff Teague, and Miles Turner are working. So we'll see. But they definitely spent a lot of money in the off season for him. But it's just a shame that none of those moves worked out so far. So I was surprised about the Pacers and the Cavaliers. 76ers really didn't surprise me because I called that they would trade those as well, but we'll get to that later on in the show. We'll save that trade for later. But I was surprised. I heard that Trey's team was thinking about trading Dion Waiters, and that one didn't surprise me either because they want to lose, and Dion Waiters single-handedly won them 13 more games, so that one wasn't a surprise to me either. I was surprised they didn't try and trade Goran Dragic, since they knew a lot of teams needed a point guard. I was surprised about that. But that's about it, So for me, I thought it was the Cavaliers. Even though I like LeBron James, I just don't like the Cavaliers. I was surprised they didn't make a move and try to get a little bitty super team in the East, even though they already are one. Try and get a superstar. I was surprised they didn't try and trade for Goran Dragic or talk to Chicago about the Wade. I was surprised, man. They were making. Well, I guess they weren't gonna have a active year this year because they got Channing Frye and a couple other people last year. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know. But one thing's for sure, we'll be so excited to hear interviews where LeBron's all like, "I need effing help." So y'all can get back on there if y'all want to. Then we can move on.
Nope, there weren't really any other teams that I thought should have made moves that didn't, or teams that. Well, I mean, there are a couple teams that made moves that probably shouldn't have made moves, but that's a whole nother story.
One player we forgot to mention was P.J. Tucker was also traded to Toronto. That's another one. So P.J. Tucker was also traded to Toronto. But let's get to our well, let's start with the Sixers' first trade, which is they traded Ersan Ilyasova. So really, what they did was get rid of all their future free agents. So they traded Ersan Ilyasova for Thiago Splitter. Now, the funny thing is, I was on the phone with Trey, and I kind of informed him about this trade, and I did the same thing with Matt yesterday. So this is fresh reaction to just the Thiago Splitter trade, not the Nerlens Noel trade. So y'all go ahead. Go ahead, Matt.
I first of all, I didn't expect Ilyasova to be traded in the first place because of the way he's been playing, the way he has been a well, I think a key piece in this process. However, you're trying to avoid excuse me, you're trying to avoid free agency, restricted free agencies, and everything, particularly off-season issues that you yourself don't want to concern yourself with, and you want to get freed up. I get it. So, but with Ilyasova, put this way, there's a lot of big men. It's a lot of big men here in Philadelphia. A lot of big men, and you knew at least two of these guys was gonna go. I didn't expect Ilyasova to be the first man out, but which leads me to my next question: what in the world is Brian Colangelo doing? You got a good thing going here, and you're doing this. So I have questions. I have a lot of questions. I mean, this trade is. I mean, thinking like, wait a minute. If you're going to if you're going to trade this man, I forgot the name doesn't elude me already. I haven't done the research on what we got and everything else. But if you give me draft picks and first round draft picks, thank you. But as far as the roster makeup, my thing with the Sixer team is chemistry. I thought that it was coming together, but the last thing you want to do is trade someone and your chemistry backfires. So that's my biggest concern. But I'm not too sure about this trade in particular. That's where I stand on this one.
For me, my kind of first reaction was that this says to me that they believe that Saric is the future. So I mean, and just alone, trading. I'm not necessarily surprised that they traded him because he's going to become a free agent, and I think he's 29 or so, or maybe 30. But I mean, he is due for a payday, especially the way he's played this year with the Thunder and with the Sixers. He's played very well. And he's getting paid $8 million right now. So I imagine that would go up to more like 8 or 12 after this season. So, I mean, to me, it was a smart move. But it's almost like I guess you would call it a salary dump. But in my opinion, if you're just doing this for a salary dump, I think you should get something back for it. Like all they get, I think they swapped second round picks. To me, I feel like you could have gotten something for Ersan, like maybe a first round pick, or maybe another player. Like to me, it didn't make sense to just kind of like swap, because I mean they did the same thing with Tiago Splitter was getting paid about the same amount of money. He's a worse player, and all they did was swap draft picks. So to me, this is saying like it's like, okay, they're kind of believing in the future of the players that they've drafted, but at the same time, they're not very good at getting back. Brian Colangelo and the rest of the front office are not very savvy yet in terms of trying to be the one who comes out on top. Like, I know it was really supposed to be just a salary dump, but at the same time, like, if I'm going to trade someone who's actually valuable and actually has added value to my team, I need to get something else that's either better or equal in value to what I'm trading. And Tiago Splitter is not equal to value in that. Like, I would have rather traded him to, like, I would have rather traded Ilyasova to, like, the Chicago for somebody like Paul Zipser in a second round pick or something like that. Like, to me, that's more valuable, especially because their biggest need is not big man. It's clearly their biggest need on this team is guards and forwards. So, small forwards at least, not power forwards and centers. I mean, that's my take on like the trade itself and what their thought process is and why they traded them.
I definitely think that just reacting to the trade myself, after seeing that they traded for Tiago Splitter, and traded Ersan Ilyasova, I was kind of. Oh, did you have more to say, Trey?
No.
Okay. I am just reacting to it as a fan first. Before reporting on it, I was kind of not surprised because as we talked ad nauseum about on this podcast, Ersan Ilyasova was playing great. He especially played really well with Joel Embiid, and they were doing really well. And I think what the Sixers did was they kind of saw that he served his part, which was to be a mentor to Dario Saric. And I guess that's what today I started to realize after looking at who they traded. That Dario Saric, even though he was balling, I think Trey and I were talking about it yesterday. The duration of Dario Saric, I think, is what made this trade happen for Ersan Ilyasova because he has served his purpose as helping Dario, adjust to the NBA game, shoot the three, and he basically was playing in Dario Saric's future role anyway as a power forward. So, now with all of that, I think that makes a little bit more sense as to why they traded him. And I think that, the Sixers are definitely making moves that, it doesn't make sense until you really start thinking about the larger picture. It took me even a day to let it digest and realize, I guess, what they're thinking. Now, you never know with the Colangelos because they lie to you in public, tell you one thing in public, and then it's something else in secret. So you never know. But that's just my whole take on it. Uh, and when I looked at it for the Sixers, I guess it's a good trade. I don't really like Tiago Splitter as I was talking to Trey last night. I got on my Stephen A. Smith and said Tiago Splitter. It's just very very detailed thing. So I'll let the fellas get back in here because I think I'm really done with my piece for right now.
Look, I think I'm looking at it from a dollar and cent standpoint. If you're, well, I understand the maturation process of Dario and everything else, and also you're looking for a salary dump, but at the same time, the goal is to be competitive. That's the goal, is to be very competitive. And I don't know what the Sixers are trying to do. Honestly, I have no clue what the Sixers are trying to accomplish here. I've come to the realization that, okay, at least this team knows that the future's in Dario, in Ben Simmons, well, and unfortunately Okafor. So as far as as far as the long haul is concerned, as I'm digesting this, I can live with this move, but I know for a fact who we got back, it ain't gonna be. It's gonna free up some money for the Sixers because I know for a fact the Sixers are not trying to spend money. They're not trying to spend money. That's one of the reasons they traded Nerlens. They're not trying to spend extra money for next year, so they're being very fiscally conservative at this point.
All right, we're moving right along then. Let's talk about the trade that we're all here to talk about. The Nerlens Noel trade. Go in, Trey, because I know that you had a visceral reaction last night. So you go ahead.
Well, I mean, y'all know my opinion on who we should have traded, and I do understand the trade because Nerlens becomes a free agent after this year, a restricted free agent, which means um, whatever contract they throw at him or qualifying offer, any team can match it, or excuse me, whatever team offers him whatever, and I think it'll probably be more, something along the lines of like 12 or something similar to maybe what Ersan Ilyasova will get, like 10, 12, 11, 13 million a year. The Sixers, if they wanted to keep him, would have had to match that. So it makes sense in that sense to trade him. But I was at this point I was actually for the Sixers actually not making any moves aside from the Ersan Ilyasova trade. I think that was actually a good trade in terms of freeing up money next year. It was only $8 million, but they're showing confidence in Dario Saric. But I still don't believe that Jahlil Okafor is the future at center or power forward. I don't believe he's a backup plan to Joel Embiid. I really, truly don't think because he's not. Although he's listed as a center, he's really more of a power forward in terms of his game. But because he's so big and slow-footed, he really can't play power forward in this day and age. So he has to play center and has to play out of position, and that's why that's the comparison I make to him is Greg Monroe, because Greg Monroe is really more of a power forward in terms of his game, but because of his size and his slow-footedness, he plays mostly center because he has to, and to me that's what Jahlil is going to be. And I think he's going to be a very consistent player that's going to, that might put up 18 points, maybe 10 rebounds, but he doesn't fit on the team. It's one thing to be able to put up 20 points and fit on the team, but it's another one thing to put up 20 points and not fit on the team, and to put up 20 points and actually fit on the team. Jahlil does not fit in the offense, and and as much as you want to say that he's kind of a mortgage plan because you don't believe in the health of Joel Embiid, and he's not. He really truly is not, because he's a completely different player. Like if you want somebody to be your kind of your backup plan to the center you have, like I would rather have somebody who's more, in terms of play style will be able to fit right into the starting lineup and play a similar game to Joel Embiid. Kind of be, have the ability to play down low, but then also have the ability to step outside and do things from that standpoint, which neither Jahlil or Nerlens actually has. So I was a proponent of. Originally, I was a proponent of keeping Nerlens and trading Jahlil, but I kind of switched up my opinion on that. And in my opinion, I think they should have traded both. But at this point, like I was saying, it came down to what, like 2:00 or so, 1:30ish, that they traded Nerlens and decided that they're going to keep Jahlil because there was nothing out there, a favorable trade out there for Jahlil. And to be honest with you, the trade for Nerlens was almost a salary dump as well, which didn't really make any sense. Although, you can say what you want about Nerlens Noel being a liability on offense. Defensively, he is a solid player, and he's a very good hustle player as well. But he's a good young player, and he has room to improve. And in my opinion, you don't trade player. You don't trade good young players for nothing like that. Like they did good Justin Anderson, but he's not going to be much more than what Robert Covington is right now. You got Andrew Bogut, who they were supposed to flip, but they didn't, and so now they're going to end up having to buy out his contract. And they got a first-round pick, which is not going to mean anything because the Mavs are going to end up keeping that pick because it's the top 18 protected pick, and the Mavs are clearly going to be in the top 18. Just they're probably going to have the number one pick. So that pick is actually going to end up that one pick will end up turning into two second-round picks in 2017 and 18. So for one, okay, good. Yeah, let's clap it up. They did a good job and traded Nerlens Noel, but at the same time, they really didn't get much in return for him. Like if you had said, like, I don't even know who the Mavs have that I would want. Like, it didn't really make sense for them to trade him and not get much. So it just like some of these trades, and it's not just the Sixers, The Kings did it, and some other teams have made some trades where it's just like, okay, what did you didn't do anything? You just kind of traded a player and freed up some cap space, which, especially if you're not a top tier team or a team that has potential to make the playoffs, like it's not like you're going to sign any top tier free agents. I don't think the Sixers are either, based on what we're seeing from the Colangelos and whether because they're not going to play Ben Simmons more than likely, and they're not going to play Joel Embiid. So it's not like you're going to play those two together and say, well, our goal here is to entice free agents. So, I mean, the idea of clearing up cap space really doesn't make much sense if you're not going to play your two best players. Like, I understand tanking, but and gaining assets, but just the same way the Celtics have all these assets. Like, okay, it's great. I have assets and I have players, but I want them on the floor playing. And it's like, all right, great, we got assets and players. I want them on the floor playing. They're not. But you guys just want to keep, it's almost like they're trying to continue this whole tanking thing because they're not going to play Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I mean, if you take Joel Embiid out of the lineup and you put Jahlil Okafor into the starting lineup, I mean, this team, Jahlil Okafor really becomes their best player, which is crazy to think about. But I mean, a team whose best players are T.J. McConnell and Jahlil Okafor and Robert Covington, I mean, that says to me that they're tanking, or they're not. I don't think they're beginning the process of tanking again. They're just kind of finishing off the process so they can get, these. Hopefully, they'll get these 2 top picks in this year's draft, which I don't mind. I mean, they need guards, and this is a guard-heavy draft. But at the same time, like if you have the opportunity to get a proven, guard, why not get him?
Well, put it this way. It's a salary dump. Bottom line, it's a salary dump. Because if you
Can I say something real quick? See, the thought process, the logic behind a salary dump is, okay, I've got a player who isn't adding really much value to my team necessarily, right? And they've got a bad contract. A good example is what's his name? Omer Asik on the Rockets or whatever team he's on. He's on the Pelicans. His contract is something like 3 years, $35 million. I mean, so this guy's getting paid almost $12 million a year, and he's sitting on the bench. Another good example is Miles Plumlee on the Trailblazers. He's getting paid something like 11 or 12 million as well, not doing anything. So the logic there is, okay, we're going to find a team that has a lot of cap space and maybe has a draft pick or two, and try to package this player who has a bad contract and maybe something else to get something good out of it. But the intention is not necessarily to get anything good back. Noel doesn't have a bad contract. Maybe he will in the future, but the Sixers are trying to think so far ahead of time and call this a salary dump. So to me, it doesn't make sense because he doesn't have a bad contract yet. He could potentially have a bad contract, and they're trying to avoid him having to give him a bad contract. But it's clearly the Mavericks. It's just all over the place because it's like the Mavericks were clearly willing to take him and negotiate a contract with him. So you can't tell me that other teams weren't willing or in need of Nerlens Noel and were willing to give up a draft pick a valuable draft pick at least, or a player that you can use going forward, not just a player who you're going to flip or who becomes a free agent after this season. And so you literally have just traded a player and gained absolutely nothing.
but also, it's more. It's just to me the Sixers are being fiscally conservative, and I don't know why. Other than you trying to lure a big name free agent. I mean, granted, you got Ben Simmons and Embiid, who A have not played together, B both hurt, C you got Okafor, who is slow-footed, uh, pretty much a one-dimensional player, and you trade Nerlens Noel because he's going to be a restricted free agent at the end of this. I mean, actually, as I'm trying to reel this sucker in, it's like that's a cop out. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it because you need that defensive presence on the floor. Yes, Okafor is a defensive liability. Nerlens, a offensive liability. But when you have Embiid on the floor, it covers for Nerlens. It covers that offensive liability because you got more of a defensive presence. Now you don't have it, and seeing that you're forced to play a half-court game, it's interesting. It really is because now you got Andrew Bogut, who you're forced to eat that. You're forced to eat that contract. You got some draft picks. Oh gosh, names are eluding me right now. I'm getting old. And yet, I'm still trying to figure out exactly the actual reason. What for? I mean, if you're trying not to, if you're the Sixers and you're trying not to match a contract from another team that's going to offer you more than what you can afford, okay, fine. But your job is to be competitive. Your job as a general manager is to put the best team that you can construct on the court. And Brian Colangelo has done some very questionable things, including not telling us about a man's injury correctly. But however, I'll be honest with you. Even with these trades, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I remember we can talk about the Dikembe Mutombo trade. Okay, I can understand that trade, but which was for Theo Ratliff at the time. But either way, the Nerlens Noel trade, I'm still trying to put two and two together here because this is one of those things where, for what? You was hoping to dump Bogut to Boston, and you didn't do it. So now you're stuck with him. Are you gonna play him? Probably not. So Sixers are known for this. I mean, they're known for taking dead weight. Andrew Bynum, Jarrett Washburn, just to name a few, just taking on dead weight. Remember Andre Kirilenko? Oh yeah, we can't be taking on dead weight like this. So the Sixers need a better approach to this, as far as trade deadline and construction of the roster, because this taking on dead weight has got to end.
Well, let me just say this, right? As what often happens on this show, I wound up being the resident Jalil Okafor defender. Now, as I've told Trey and Matt in person and on this podcast, right? You don't get rid of now. Let's start with Nerlens Noel, right? So when you think about the Sixers, right? They basically gained nothing to get Nerlens Noel because if you remember, that was Sam Hickey's first year, and what did that fool do? He traded our best point guard to the Pelicans. That's how the Pelicans got Drew Holiday in the first place for Nerlens Noel. So we gave up nothing to get nothing, is what I'm saying, right? So some people, and they will point out that Nerlens Noel is a great defensive player. He's we all admit he's an offensive liability. He does not play offense well. But what I think that y'all are blinded by, you both have said it, but Embiid and Simmons are too injury prone. I keep telling you guys, the logical decision here was to trade Nerlens Noel because you have to look at it outside of the fandom, right? So if you tell me that you have a player in Joel Embiid who missed his first 2 years due to the same injury Kevin Durant had, the foot injury, then now currently he has a torn meniscus. Before that, in college, he had an ACL, MCL injury that he had to get surgery on that kept him out the first year. So he basically has the legs and the knees of a 30, 40-year-old, right? And then you have Ben Simmons, same thing. When he came in, it was ankle, then it became ankle and foot. So he had the same injury, again, that Kevin Durant has. 76ers, big-time lottery picks in the last 4 years. None of them have been healthy. The healthiest big we have is Jalil Okafor, right? And that's not saying much because he missed a good portion of the season because he had to get surgery on his knee, right? But you don't get rid of 17.8 points per game and 8 rebounds. He can rebound because he was averaging 8 rebounds last year. He can rebound. But the point I'm trying to make is this. All this depends on time, right? Now, I'll bet you that you will see a new Jalil Okafor because he's had to sit, and we have all said, rightfully so in this podcast, that it is wrong to have them sing. This is why I've argued back with Matt about how it's a bad thing for the 76ers to have centers, just like we've seen it on other teams too. We don't really follow the Denver Nuggets, but the Denver Nuggets are going through this with having too many shooting guards and small forwards. The Phoenix Suns are going through this with having too many guards. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing to have in the NBA because they don't know how to handle it. They don't know who to sit. They don't know who to play politics with. They don't know who to trade. And so what happens with this is, especially when you lie to your people and you play politics with Jalil Okafor and you don't play him, as I mentioned numerous amounts of times on this podcast, is if you don't play Jalil Okafor, you're telling me that Nerlens Noel is your second best player on your roster, then I don't want him. I don't want Jalil Okafor. And people say, well, why was the market so small for Jalil Okafor? Whom? Could it be that they weren't playing him? The Sixers were their own worst nightmare when it came to trying to trade Jalil Okafor. Excuse me. Because they wanted to get rid of him, yet didn't want to play him. They had two things that were working against them here. One, they wanted to trade a player who, even though there's good tape on, he's a great offensive player. You don't play him, so why would I play him? You don't even think he's good enough to be the second best player on your team. So what makes him a valuable asset for me? What makes him good to pair with Paul George? Because you don't think he's good enough to be paired with Joel Embiid. So, and my thing is, when you think about this trade and when you think about why Jalil Okafor is still on this roster, you have to think about it like the Sixers have. And I pointed this out to you two on numerous occasions. What we have here are red flags for both of our top 2 picks, right? We have Jalil Okafor who can't stay healthy to save his life. And I respect the hustle, but bull, excuse me, you're 7'2". Why are you diving into a crowd? Big men have short lifespans in the NBA anyway. And I've told this to you both. He is we basically have the Cameroonian Yao Ming. That's what we have. He'll give us like a good 6 to 7 years, and then injuries will get it, right? Great player, great person to have and everything. But what might wind up happening with Joel Embiid is he probably won't play past 7 years. And that's just being realistic, right? With the leg injury he has, the fact that he has a torn meniscus, he'll probably need surgery on that at the end of the year. And the fact that the Sixers keep being stupid and letting him play and letting him practice like he was today, a full participant, right? So you have various different things that work against why Jallo Okafor is still on this roster, and why Nose Noel isn't, right? So first you have this thing where, as we all have said,
Ky- Kyla, Kyla.
He's out.
out,
Oh,
huh?
I thought your mic had cut out or something.
Like right now we have Jallo Okafor, right? TJ McConnell, Nick Stauskas, Dario Saric, right? That'll probably be the starting four, the starting five, and Robert Covington. Now, if what happens, like is happening right now, where you have Joel Embiid out with injury, and then you have Ben Simmons out with injury, then Jallo Okafor becomes your best player. And so what I'm saying is, if you get rid of Jallo Okafor, right, they probably won't get good return on him no matter where they trade him to, right? So if you trade him, and then you tell me, because we all know no one disagrees that Ben Simmons and not two injury prone people that probably won't have a long career in this NBA. So then we're right back to square one, because if you're telling me that your future is going to be Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and both of them haven't proven that they can stay healthy, you need Jallo Okafor and Dario Saric to help when you win some games to make it so you're not going 0-82. You know what I mean? So I guess before I let y'all come back in here, I guess
Here's the thing. I understand your point as far as the Okafor and keep him on the roster and everything else. But you have to understand. You have to understand this too. The way I'm looking at it is also this. Okay, yeah, one's offensive liability, one's defensive liability, and to have Okafor not play, it does bring his stock down a little bit more, and I think that was the Sixers' fault for that too, because if you try and trade the man that is Okafor and you want the best deal that you can get, sitting him down was a terrible idea to begin with. Why would you want to sit him down? You try and get rid of this, for lack of a better term, get rid of this man for the best thing you can get, and yet you sit him down. I mean, I can understand his injuries and everything else. I get it, or prevention of injuries, which the Sixers are great in the league, and preventing being super cautious with injuries. But Simmons is hurt. Okafor has been hurt. Embiid is constantly being hurt. And for the Sixers, I think what they need is a insurance policy. That's what the Sixers need. They need to really draft an insurance policy. And I thought that originally Nerlens Noel could be an insurance policy originally, but I was wrong. So with that being said, the Sixers need insurance, and they need it quick. That's the bottom line. They need insurance, and because if you don't have the insurance, you're gonna fall into these traps and pit holes that the Sixers are in right now. And Colin them bounced out, but that's the point of it. The Sixers need insurance. They need insurance because you can't win. Like, if you're so worried about injuries, then you need to make trades or make deals to where as though you have that policy.
Yeah, man. Like I just don't understand the. Like I'm saying, like the whole salary dump thing. I understand salary dumps. Like salary dumps work when a player has a bad contract. But when a player,
Right.
you're trying to avoid a player from having a bad contract, like it doesn't make sense to trade that person, especially when they're only 23 or 24, for nothing. Like, because for me, if you're looking for something to be more of a salary dump in the context of a young player, you have to look for something. You can't just be solely a salary dump, especially because uh, um, Nerlens Noel adds value to that team. I don't think clearly he doesn't make them much better than what they are, but he does add value to that team, and
And
it's
to
probably
fix
going to
the
be a building block for them in the future. Like now they have, um, they just traded for what's his name, Yogi Ferrell, who seems to be like even if he's not a starter there, he's going to be a good building block as a backup point guard. You got Harrison Barnes, who's shown that he's more than just a bench player. And now you have Nerlens Noel, who even if he's not a starter, he's going to be a key piece to their rebuilding process. And um, you know, the pick they traded to the Sixers is not their is one of their picks, but I don't think it's this year's pick. I feel like it's next year's pick because the pick that they have this year is set to be like the number one pick in the draft.
I think
So
it's top 17 protected.
it's top 18 protected, but I don't believe that that's. I think that might be a 2018 pick because I can't
No,
see them giving up their 2017 draft pick for Nerlens Noel. And if it is, then maybe this trade is better than I thought it was. But I mean they're set to be they're one of the worst teams in the league, and they're set to have good odds to have the first pick in the draft. So I don't see why they would just trade that pick away for Nerlens Noel.
I don't know either because if the Sixers thinking they're going to get a first get a first round pick out of it, out of like sheer luck, okay, fine, whatever. But I don't. It the whole thing just reeks of. This is reeks. That's all I can tell you because theoretically the Sixers are still trying to stockpile draft picks, still trying to stockpile them while they're in this rebuild process mode. So that's what it looks like. It's like they're still trying to, for lack of a better term, hoard draft picks. That's what they're trying to maintain to do. Is kind of hoard as many draft picks as you can, and you could use those draft picks to for trade to trade for more talent. So theoretically, I think that's what they're trying to do is trying to hoard as many draft picks as you can, and also you want to. But I agree with you on the salary dump side. I mean, I'm gonna use baseball. Ryan Howard when he signed that big contract, you know, everybody knew. Okay, you want to hit 35 home runs, 100 some odd RBIs. You knew it. And then you get the Achilles tendon injury and all this other types of injuries. Okay, that's the salary dump because your value dropped and your production dropped. That's a salary dump. For Nerlens Noel, this if you think it will be a salary dump, which I thought it was originally, if you think it will be a salary dump, then the thinking is wrong. The whole thinking is wrong. So I don't like. I think as of right now, this is what I'm thinking. Theoretically,